I never thought a proud mother could feel invisible in a room full of people until that day. I walked into the auditorium, my hands clutching a small purse that had carried every penny I'd saved for this moment, my heart swelling with pride. My son Jason was graduating from the academy, his dream, his blood, sweat, and tears, and I had fought every day just to be here. The seats were polished, the lighting bright, the air buzzing with excitement and whispered conversations. Everyone seemed perfectly put together, tailored suits, expensive dresses, gleaming shoes. And then there was me. I tried not to notice how my simple blue dress and worn flats made me stick out. I shouldn't have had to. I was his mother. This was my seat. But as soon as I settled into my chair, I felt it, the cold weight of judgment. Heads turned. Eyes scanned me like I was some unwelcome stranger intruding on their carefully curated world. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore it, and focused on the stage where the ceremony was about to begin. And then I saw them. 2 security guards standing by the front aisle, their expressions flat, almost rehearsed. I tried to convince myself they were just making sure everyone was seated. But the way they locked eyes on me told a different story. My chest tightened as one of them stepped closer. "Ma'am," he said, his voice loud enough for several people to turn. "You're going to need to leave." Time froze. I blinked. I must have heard him wrong. I was sure of it. I'm her mother," I stammered, my voice trembling. "My son is graduating today. I have every right to be here." The guard's gaze didn't waver. His partner stepped closer, reaching as if to guide me toward the exit. Every eye in the room seemed to lock onto me, judging, scrutinizing, like I was some kind of intruder. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, a rush of anger and humiliation battling with my desire to stay calm. "Sir," I said, my voice shaking but louder now. "He worked his whole life to get here. I worked mine to get him here. I am not leaving." The guard didn't respond with words, just a stiff nod, signaling his partner. They moved in. My hands gripped the edge of my chair, knuckles white as I fought not to shrink. I could hear whispers now, soft at first, then louder, echoing around the hall. "Who is she? Does she belong here? Is she lost?" I wanted to disappear. I wanted to tell myself it didn't matter what they thought. But it did. Because I had waited for this day and I had earned this moment as much as Jason had. Every step I had taken in my life, every struggle I had faced alone, had led to this auditorium, this seat, this view of my son in his uniform. And now, it was slipping away in the blink of an eye. As I tried to stand my ground, my eyes found Jason. He was across the room. In a perfectly ironed uniform, scanning the crowd, smiling politely at someone near the front. His smile faltered when he caught my gaze. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable, but there was also fear. Fear that the moment we had dreamed of together would be stolen by people who didn't understand us. I wanted to tell him I was okay. I wanted to tell him not to worry. But my throat was tight, my voice a fragile thread. I could feel tears pressing behind my eyes, threatening to spill. And then, in the corner of the room, I saw it, an unfamiliar figure moving toward the aisle. At first, I thought it was another guard, another threat waiting to push me out. But it wasn't. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, walking with a confidence that seemed to demand attention without asking for it. Behind him, I noticed 5 more, moving in a line that was impossible to ignore. There was something about them, something calm, controlled, yet undeniably powerful. My heart skipped a beat. My breath caught. I had no idea who they were, but I knew somehow that they had come for me. The guards hesitated, their confident movements faltering as they took in the sight. I could feel the tension in the room shift. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mix of confusion and curiosity as people began to notice them too. And just like that, the shame that had wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket began to loosen. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone would see me. Not for my dress, not for my shoes, not for the simplicity of my life, but for the mother who had never stopped fighting for her son. And maybe, the world would finally understand that some bonds, some honor and some love couldn't be pushed aside so easily. The moment I saw them, A jolt of something I couldn't name ran through me. Fear, hope, disbelief, all tangled together. The 6 men stopped a few feet from the aisle, their presence commanding the room without a word. They weren't moving aggressively, but every step they took made the guards shift uneasily, as if the air itself had changed. I had no idea who they were yet, but something told me they weren't ordinary people. The first man, the tallest among them, stepped closer. His dark eyes scanned the crowd for just a second, then landed on me. And in that instant, I felt as if someone had handed me a shield. His gaze wasn't questioning. It wasn't judgmental. It simply said, "You belong here." The guard's confidence was fading. One of them, the taller one, spoke through gritted teeth. "Step aside. This doesn't concern you." The man's voice, calm but firm, cut through the tension like steel through cloth. "It does. She stays." My heart skipped a beat. Did he just defend me? Was he saying I had a right to be here? My hands trembled in my lap as I tried to stand taller, to look like I wasn't shaking. I wanted to speak, to thank them, to explain myself, but the words caught in my throat. All I could do was watch. Another of the 6 men moved slightly forward, his expression unreadable, controlled, but every inch of him screamed authority. "She is Jason's mother," he said, and I felt the weight of the words as if they had been carved in stone. "If she leaves, none of us stay." The crowd had gone quiet. I could feel their eyes on me, but they weren't filled with judgment anymore. They were curious, tense, waiting to see what would happen. I could hear whispers. "Who are they? Are they security? SEALs?" My son had trained with a team of SEALs. He'd mentioned them in passing, stories of discipline, sacrifice, and loyalty, but I had never imagined they would appear here, in this moment, to defend me. My chest tightened, a mixture of awe and relief flooding through me. I didn't feel small anymore. The guards exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Their arrogance had vanished, replaced with hesitation. One of them shifted his weight, clearly unsure of what to do next. I could see their hands twitching near the holsters at their hips, but they didn't move forward. It was as if the 6 men had created an invisible barrier, a line that could not be crossed. I could feel tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. All those moments I had felt humiliated. All the nights I had worked myself to exhaustion to support my son. All the times I had worried whether I would ever belong in a room like this. They were suddenly irrelevant. The presence of these men had rewritten the rules. I wasn't just a simple mother anymore. I was someone who mattered. Someone worth defending. Then the tension escalated. The taller guard took a step forward, voice raised, trying to regain control. "You don't get to—" But he didn't finish. One of the 6 men moved just a fraction closer, and the guard froze mid-sentence. The air was electric. The audience was holding its breath, the room thick with anticipation. I could feel every heartbeat, mine and theirs, synchronized in that charged silence. I glanced at my son. He was standing at the edge of the stage, his jaw tight, eyes wide with a mix of fear and pride. He had worked so hard to earn this moment, to stand in front of all these people, and now it looked like his mother's presence might be in jeopardy. But then he saw the 6 men surrounding me, and his expression softened. Relief washed over his face. He knew. He understood that I wasn't alone. That somehow, these men, strangers to most of the room, had become my protectors. I could feel my resolve hardening. I straightened in my seat, crossed my arms, and met the gaze of the guards. "I am not leaving," I said, my voice steady now, stronger than it had been before. "Not today. Not for you. Not for anyone." The tallest SEAL gave me the slightest nod, almost imperceptible, but it felt like he was saying, "We've got you." The guards took a step back, hesitation turning into frustration. Their authority, which had seemed absolute just minutes ago, was crumbling. The tension in the room was unbearable, and I knew that everyone could feel it. The audience was silent, yet their attention pressed down on us, expectant, ready to see whether the situation would explode or resolve. Then something unexpected happened. One of the 6 men, his voice low but with a sharp edge, spoke to the guards. "If you touch her, we all leave. And you won't like what happens next." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was undeniable. The guards' faces paled. Their posture stiffened, and I realized, with a mixture of relief and disbelief, that they had no plan, no backup, and no leverage against these men. I leaned back slightly, feeling the pressure lift from my chest, but I didn't relax completely. The conflict wasn't over. This was just the beginning. But for the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that perhaps my dignity, my place here, could be preserved. And as I watched the 6 men stand around me, silent but unyielding, I knew one thing. This graduation would not be taken from me. Not by anyone. Not by anyone who didn't understand that some bonds, between a mother and her son, and between brothers in arms, were unbreakable. The air in the auditorium felt like it had thickened, pressing down on me from all sides. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears, loud enough to drown out the whispers around me. The 6 men standing near me radiated calm, but I could feel their alertness like a shield, tense, ready for anything. The guards, on the other hand, were twitching, their confidence shattered, their faces pale. I thought maybe it was over, that the moment of humiliation had passed. But then I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It had become personal. One of the guards, the shorter one, stepped forward, his voice shaking this time. You can't just interfere. She's not supposed to be here. His words faltered under the weight of the 6 men surrounding me. But it wasn't the interruption itself that made my stomach drop. It was the venom behind it. He wasn't just enforcing rules. He was trying to shame me, to make me feel small, to strip me of every ounce of dignity I had fought for my whole life. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I am Jason's mother, I said louder this time. He's earned this day. I am not leaving. You have no right to humiliate me in front of everyone who came to celebrate him. The taller SEAL stepped slightly in front of me, as if to put himself between me and the guard. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met mine for a brief moment. I saw something there that made my chest tighten. Recognition. Not just of me, but of what this moment meant. I wasn't alone. And yet, despite their presence, my pulse was racing. The humiliation, the fear, the uncertainty, it was all still there, lingering like smoke. Then, unexpectedly, one of the guards snorted and gestured toward the aisle. You think showing up with your buddies makes a difference? Rules are rules. You leave, or we call security to remove you. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Security? Remove me? I felt my knees weaken for a split second, but then my son's face flashed in my mind. His smile. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about graduation. The countless nights he had spent training, dreaming, sacrificing. I could not, would not, let them take this from him or from me. Without thinking, I spoke again, voice trembling but strong. Go ahead, call them. I am not leaving. The tension in the room was unbearable now. The audience had stopped whispering. They were watching, waiting, some leaning forward, others holding their breath. The shorter guard's hands twitched near his belt, and I realized they were ready to escalate. The thought of being forcibly removed sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Not now. And then the unthinkable happened. One of the 6 men, he was in the back, quiet, observant, stepped forward and spoke, his voice calm but icy. If you touch her, this ceremony ends. Do you really want to see every person here turn against you? The guards froze. My stomach clenched. Was he bluffing? Could they really stop an entire auditorium from turning on these men? But I didn't need to question it. I could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes. Their arrogance was cracking, and suddenly, the whole situation felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Then, just when I thought I might finally breathe, one of the guards muttered under his breath, loud enough for me to hear, "You think we'll let a nobody like her ruin our day?" "Nobody?" I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, but the words rang louder than I expected. Nobody? After everything, after every struggle, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, I was nobody? Rage and fear collided in my chest. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to stay seated, to keep my voice calm even as my mind screamed. I looked at the 6 men again. They were statues of resolve, but I could see the tension in their shoulders, the way their eyes darted briefly toward the guards. I realized then that this wasn't just about protecting me. It wasn't even about graduation. This was about principle, about honor, about standing up when injustice stared you down and refused to blink. The guards stepped closer, one deliberately bumping my chair as if to push me out. My pulse skyrocketed. I could feel every eye in the room on me, and for a terrifying moment I thought I might break. But then Jason's voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. "Mom!" I looked up. He was standing at the edge of the stage, his hands clenched at his sides, his eyes blazing. "She stays. That's my mother. You will not touch her." The room seemed to shake. His words, simple but powerful, reverberated through the space. The guards froze mid-step. The 6 men exchanged a look, subtle but decisive, and I realized they weren't just standing with me. They were ready to act if necessary. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would betray me. The humiliation, the shame, the fear, they were all still there, simmering under the surface. But now they were tempered by something stronger, defiance. I wasn't leaving. Not for anyone. Not today. And suddenly the impossible felt possible. The guards hesitated. The air was thick, electric, charged with the unspoken question. Who would make the next move? And deep down I knew whatever happened next would change everything. The auditorium felt like it had shrunk, every seat pressing in, every breath amplified. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, my hands gripping the edge of the chair so hard I thought I might leave indents. The guards were frozen, uncertain, but I knew they were only holding back for a moment. One wrong move and it could all erupt into chaos. And I didn't just feel fear. I felt the weight of every injustice that had ever been done to me. Then it happened. One of the shorter guards, clearly trying to regain control, leaned in toward me, his voice low and sharp. "Step aside. You don't belong here." I looked at him, my eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and fury I hadn't known I possessed. "I do belong here," I said, my voice firm, shaking only slightly. "My son earned this day. I earned this day, and you will not take it from me." The taller SEAL, who had been standing just behind me, stepped closer, his presence immediately amplifying the tension. I felt the heat of authority radiate from him. "Touch her, and you will regret it," he said, calm, deliberate. There was no threat in his tone, only certainty, and it sent a shiver down my spine. The guards hesitated again. That moment of hesitation. It was all we needed. My pulse was racing, every nerve in my body alert, and then it happened. A sudden commotion from the back of the room drew everyone's attention. The doors burst open and another man wearing the same uniform as the 6 strode in, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were a dozen more, moving with precision, disciplined, their eyes locked on the front of the auditorium. My stomach dropped. I recognized the insignia on their sleeves immediately, more of Jason's SEAL brothers. My breath caught in my throat. It was overwhelming. I had never felt so small and so protected at the same time. The guards looked as if they had been punched in the gut. Their faces drained of color, their hands fumbling as they realized the sheer force they were up against. I could feel every eye in the room on me again, but this time, it wasn't judgment or mockery. It was anticipation. The first of the newcomers stepped forward, his voice ringing through the hall. "She stays. This is her son's moment. You will not interfere." The arrogance of the guards was gone. They opened their mouths, but no words came. For the first time, the power had shifted entirely. Then the unthinkable happened. One of the original 6 SEALs, the tallest among them, leaned down slightly and in a voice that only I could hear, whispered, "Look at them. See how powerless they feel when justice is on your side?" I felt a rush of something I hadn't felt in years. Validation, relief, power. My knees, which had been weak moments ago, steadied. I lifted my chin. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, not just in this room, but in my own life. But the climax wasn't over. One of the guards, desperate, tried to step toward me again, perhaps hoping to save his own ego. And then, shock, I heard the crack of a microphone falling from the stage. Someone in the audience had accidentally knocked it over in the tension of the moment, but it sent a ripple through the room. Every head turned. The guards were exposed, standing in front of dozens of witnesses who could see their hesitation, their fear. The crowd leaned in, silent but waiting, ready to erupt at the slightest provocation. I could feel tears brimming in my eyes. The shame I had carried for so long, the fear that I would be pushed aside, humiliated, erased, was dissipating in the face of something undeniable: loyalty, honor, protection. People weren't just watching anymore. They were seeing. Seeing me, seeing my son, seeing the truth. Jason appeared at the edge of the stage, his uniform perfect, his voice steady. "She stays. That's final. You don't get to decide who belongs here. You don't get to humiliate anyone like this." The guards froze completely. The 6 original men, along with the reinforcements, flanked me like statues of resolve. There was no aggression, no violence, only an unshakable presence that made the auditorium itself feel as if it had shifted on its axis. And then, something that stunned me completely. One of the guards, pale and defeated, muttered under his breath, She's his mother?" I nodded slowly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "Yes," I said. "And I am proud of it." The tension cracked like glass. The guards slowly backed away, muttering to each other, and I realized, with a mixture of disbelief and relief, that the fight, for now, was over. I was safe. I was seen. And my son? My son had stood up for me, surrounded by the brothers who had trained with him, who respected us. I sank back into my seat, letting a deep breath escape me. I didn't cry yet. Not fully. But the lump in my throat loosened, and I felt the first real spark of pride in my chest. We had survived the impossible, and yet I knew this moment wasn't just about survival. It was about honor, about courage, about standing tall when everyone else expected you to crumble. And deep down, I knew. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same again. The room was electric, every eye glued to us, every whisper amplified by the tension that still lingered. I could feel my hands trembling, but this time it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, pride, and a strange, powerful mix of relief and disbelief. The guards had retreated to the edge of the auditorium, their confidence shattered, their authority stripped away in front of everyone. For the first time that day, I felt truly seen, not just by the 6 men who had stood by me, not just by Jason, but by every person who had been watching. Jason's name was called. I had waited for this moment my entire life, and now it was here. The culmination of years of sacrifice, tears, and unwavering belief in my son. My chest swelled with emotion. He stood tall on the stage, his uniform crisp, his posture impeccable. But it was the way his eyes found mine that made my heart almost stop. They weren't just eyes. They were an entire story of struggle, perseverance, and triumph condensed into a single, unwavering gaze. When he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, the 6 men flanking me shifted slightly, a silent cue that they were still ready to protect, to defend if anyone dared challenge the moment. I realized how surreal it was. I wasn't just a mother watching her child graduate. I was a mother who had been on the brink of humiliation, on the verge of being erased, and had survived intact, protected by the loyalty and strength of others who recognized what mattered most. As Jason shook hands with the dean, I could see a flicker of tension pass over his face just for a moment. His training, his discipline, the years of preparation, they were all visible in that single controlled smile. But then he turned toward me. He raised his diploma, held it high, and for a heartbeat, the world stopped. I stood, unable to contain myself any longer. Applause erupted around me, some for the graduates, some, I realized, for the defiance, the courage, the injustice that had been righted in real time. I felt tears burn my eyes as I clutched my chest. Every insult, every doubt, every quiet moment when I had felt invisible, all of it dissolved into this single, perfect victory. The 6 men flanking me shifted closer as Jason descended the stage. I could see the subtle acknowledgement in their eyes. Mission accomplished, danger neutralized. I wanted to reach out and hug them all, to thank them for a lifetime of gratitude in just a few seconds. But I didn't. I had learned long ago that some gratitude is silent, felt rather than spoken. Jason reached me, his hands warm, his grip firm. "Mom," he whispered, just enough for me to hear over the applause. "I wouldn't let them take this from us. Ever." My throat tightened. I could feel the weight of the day pressing down and lifting all at once. "I know," I whispered back. "I know." And then something unexpected happened. The guards, now pushed completely to the edge, tried one last desperate move. The taller one cleared his throat, attempting to reclaim what little dignity he had left. This isn't over," he said, his voice barely above a murmur, yet filled with defiance. The room went still again. Everyone's eyes flicked toward the confrontation, sensing the final sparks of conflict. But before anyone could act, one of the 6 SEALs stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "It is over. She's staying." "You've already lost." I felt a chill as those words sank in. The guards' shoulders slumped. Their jawlines tightened. And then, slowly, they backed toward the door, leaving without another word. The entire auditorium seemed to exhale, the tension evaporating as quickly as it had built. I sank into my chair, exhausted, my hands still shaking. Jason hugged me tightly, and I felt the warmth of his pride, his love, his trust. Around us, the audience began to clap again, this time for Jason, but also, secretly, I knew, for me. For the mother who refused to be invisible. For the simple woman who had survived the impossible with grace and courage. And yet, even as the applause washed over me, I could feel the ripple of consequences. The guards were gone, but their scowls lingered in my mind. I knew there would be whispers in the days to come, about the humiliation they had tried to inflict, about the 6 men who had turned the tide, about the audacity of a mother refusing to be erased. I knew that this moment would not be forgotten, for better or worse, but in this room, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was Jason. What mattered was the years of sweat and tears we had poured into this day, finally crystallized in a single, undeniable triumph. And what mattered most was the knowledge that even in a world that sometimes tried to make you small, there were forces, loyalty, love, courage, that could make you feel unstoppable. I held Jason's hand as we walked out together, the 6 men trailing behind us like silent guardians. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, every judgment, every whisper. But I no longer cared. For the first time in a long time, I felt untouchable, not because I was above anyone, but because I had stood my ground, and the world had, finally, recognized my place. As we exited the auditorium, I realized something profound. This day wasn't just a graduation, it was a reckoning, a lesson, a reminder that courage and love could defy shame and fear, and that sometimes the people who showed up for you when the world tried to push you down were the ones who made life worth living. We walked out of the auditorium together, Jason by my side, the 6 men behind us like silent shadows of protection. The air outside felt different, fresher somehow, as if the weight of the day had lifted and the world had shifted just a little. I could still feel my pulse racing, still feel the adrenaline clinging to my skin. But now it was tempered by relief, pride, and a deep, unshakable joy. Jason glanced at me, his eyes softening in a way that made my heart ache with love. "Mom," he said quietly, "you were incredible in there. I don't think anyone could have handled that as well as you did." I smiled, though tears pricked my eyes again. "I wasn't incredible, Jason. I just refused to be invisible. That's all." He shook his head, grinning. "You were more than that. You showed everyone what courage looks like. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to really feel it. All the pride, the relief, the vindication. The shame that had been gnawing at me for years, the fear that I would never be seen or respected, it had finally lifted. And I realized something. This day wasn't just about graduation. It was about standing up for yourself, about refusing to let others define your worth. The 6 men fell into step with us as we walked through the crowded parking lot. They said nothing, but I could feel their presence, a steady, quiet reassurance. I wanted to thank them properly, to tell them what their loyalty meant, but words felt inadequate. Instead, I simply nodded at them and they nodded back. That was enough. When we reached our car, Jason opened the door for me and I slipped inside, letting myself sink into the seat. My hands were still trembling slightly, but the fear had gone. I was calm now, grounded. I could finally breathe. Jason slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. "Mom," he said softly, "I've never been prouder of you." "You didn't just survive that? You stood tall even when they tried to break you?" I looked at him, my chest tight with emotion. "I didn't do it for me, Jason. I did it for you. For this moment. For every sacrifice you've made, every late night, every early morning. I couldn't let anyone take this from you." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "You didn't just protect me today. You taught me something too." I wanted to ask him what, but he didn't need to say it. I could feel it. The lesson, the bond, the unspoken understanding that we had survived something together that would stay with us forever. As we drove home, the streets calm in the late afternoon sun, I reflected on everything that had happened. The humiliation, the fear, the guards who thought they could define my worth. It all seemed distant now. What remained was something stronger, the knowledge that courage and love are unstoppable when paired with conviction. That sometimes, the people who show up for you, the ones willing to stand beside you when the world tries to push you down, are the ones who remind you of your own strength. I thought about the audience, the whispers, the eyes that had watched us. I wondered how many of them had been moved, even quietly, by what they had seen. Perhaps they had learned something about justice, about loyalty, about the importance of standing up when it matters most. Perhaps they had learned that dignity isn't given. It's taken, defended, and earned. We pulled into the driveway, and I looked at Jason, feeling a swell of love that nearly took my breath away. "Today was more than a graduation," I said. "It was a lesson, not just for you or for me, but for anyone who thinks they can define someone else's worth." Jason smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "And we passed it together," he said. I nodded, feeling tears slip down my cheeks. I let myself feel every bit of it: pride, relief, vindication, and above all, gratitude. Gratitude for my son, for the 6 men who had stood with us, for the courage I had found within myself. As I stepped out of the car, I looked up at the sky, the late sun casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, and realized something profound. Life will always throw challenges at you. There will always be moments when the world tries to make you feel small, powerless, invisible, but in those moments you discover who you truly are. You discover your courage, your strength, and the people who truly matter. And sometimes when you refuse to bend, refuse to be silenced, you not only protect yourself, you inspire everyone around you. That day, I had been humiliated, challenged, and tested. But I had stood tall. And in standing tall, I had won something far greater than a graduation ceremony. I had won my dignity. I had won my son's respect. I had won the reminder that even the simplest mother, when backed by love and courage, can face the impossible and emerge stronger than ever. And as we walked into our home, I knew this was a lesson I would carry for the rest of my life, that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about standing firm, even when the world is against you, and never letting anyone take away what's rightfully yours.